Thanks, that was a very moving talk. I secretly want to be a data scientist. That'd be so awesome. All right, so thank you. Our next presenter, her name is Krystal and she's an anthropologist, and she's here to talk to you all about the anthropology of coffee, something that we all know and love as New Yorkers. So please welcome Krystal.
So question, why is it that 90% of Americans can't start their day without a cup of coffee? That was the question I set out to answer because I decided I was going to give up coffee, and that didn't work. I was cranky, I was miserable, I was disorganized, I was a mess. That's what my desk looked like, and it wasn't working. So I started drinking coffee again, but I started, to think about this. Coffee has such an important role in our daily lives, yet we don't really know why. So I did a little digging, and I thought we should change that. I learned that our word for coffee actually has a Dutch origin, but they didn't discover coffee. Actually, legend has it, an Ethiopian goat herder discovered coffee. And the story goes, he was tending his flock, and they ate a bunch of bright red berries, which of course were ripe coffee beans. And they got really, really energized and super hyper, and so he collected these beans, and he takes them back to an elder in his village. And he's like, what's going on here? And the elder says, oh, this must be the work of evil spirits. And he throws them in the fire. Essentially, he's roasting the beans. So he smells the roasted beans and has second thoughts and collects them and mixes it with water. And that's how we supposedly got our first cup of brewed coffee. Now, that's the stuff of legend. What we actually know is that coffee was being brewed in Yemen in the 11th century. And by the 13th century, it was widespread throughout the Muslim world. So the Arabs are actually given official credit for the whole coffee escapade. We also know that during this time, coffee houses were becoming really, really popular. They were social spaces, they were also political spaces, and that didn't make Islamic leaders very happy. They thought that coffee was too energizing, and it worked people up into a political fervor. And so they tried to ban coffee and the coffee houses. That didn't work, because we still have coffee, and we have coffee houses today. So what they decided to do was they were going to control the flow of coffee. And they did this by boiling the beans so that they'd be sterile, and you couldn't grow anywhere outside of the Arabian Peninsula. This worked until about the 16th century, when an Indian traveler strapped the beans to his belly and smuggled them into India. India was a colonized state at the time, and this actually helped the beans spread throughout the world. We have the Dutch who had a presence there, and the Dutch East India Trading Company. And I guess maybe as sort of a trade relations kind of thing, they offered a plant to Louis XIV. There he is with his plant. Doesn't he look really happy? A naval officer stole a seedling from this plant, and he takes it to Martinique. And it was a really harrowing voyage. The ship nearly sinks. He nearly dies, someone nearly steals the plant, but he makes it, and he plants it, and it grows, and it gives us 20,000 coffee plants in the Caribbean, and helps spread coffee throughout the Caribbean. So coffee's going great. And then along come the 1960s in America, when we start to see a decline. There was a frost, so it drives the price of beans up. Consumers don't want to pay more for coffee that they think is bland. And then the younger consumers don't want to drink coffee because they say that's what their parents and grandparents do. They want nothing to do with it. So Ogilvy and Mather said we need to change the image, and they introduced a segmented market. And this gives us our flavored coffees, our decaf, our instant. There's coffee for everybody. This also opens the door for smaller brands. So the idea with the smaller brands is that they have a closer connection to the coffee, and it all fits with this new consumer who wants to be connected and know more. We know that some small brands grow really, really big, like Starbucks, but that's the idea behind it. Also during this time, the culture of work is changing, right? More people are entering the workforce. We're seeing night shifts. We're being grouped into these hard time sets when we're supposed to be working, but not everyone is productive. So what do? Well, employers figured out that caffeine is a really, really fast-acting stimulant. It enters the bloodstream quickly, and it targets the parts of your brain that have to do with sleep and memory and concentration. So coffee enters the workplace because employers install coffee machines in the workplace to encourage productivity. So all of these factors combined give us the ritual of consumption. So we start thinking that we need to drink coffee in the morning in order to be productive, when we're really taught through all of these different factors that we need coffee. So what does coffee have to do with anthropology? Well, anthropology helps us understand our daily lives, the human experience. And what I've done basically is I've taken something that you've probably never really thought twice about and shown how it can explain the larger social fabric. And that's what I try to do. I write for anthropologyinpractice.com, and I take things like baseball and parties and festivals and parades and look at what they mean. So check me out when you have a chance, anthropologyinpractice.com.